Life's too short to drive boring cars. So if you've seen a few of my videos recently where I talked about 3 of the key areas that can cost you a whole lot of money if they're bad in some of these modern day vehicles. The engine is the first one. That's what gives it the power to move the vehicle down the road. Number 2 is the transmission. That's actually what transmits the power from the engine to the wheels, also equally expensive if it fails. And the third is the electrical system, which essentially gives everything the lights and the control between engine, transmission, wheels, and all of the safety elements. It can also be a very, very expensive proposition if you have a vehicle with bad electrical system. But today I'm going to help each and every one of you and share a list of some of the worst vehicles with some horrible electrical system that you want to avoid like the plague. Let's get into it now. Now the first vehicle on my list with some of the worst electrical systems belongs to this little Italian hot rod right behind me, and it's the Alfa Romeo Giulia. Now while there's a lot of loyal customers and they say they would in fact buy these cars again because many people report they're more enjoyable and more engaging to drive than a 3 Series BMW or an Audi S3 or S4, the problem really comes down to the lack of reliability. And what does that mean? Well, did you realize only about 13% of these make it 3 years without a significant repair or time in the shop outside of an oil service? Before we get to all the nitty gritty, let's take a quick look. I mean, here's why people love these cars and why they say they would buy them again. I mean, you got great style. Obviously, you've got large dual exhaust tips right there. And of course, the Giulia. And what matters most is the Alfa Romeo badge, which isn't exactly your Honda or Toyota. Now, of course, we got these great little accents, interesting little LED tail lights, and we go down the side and it's very, very nice, slightly vanilla yogurt, but it's still got nice curves and contours to it. You've also got some great wheels available, and of course a standard mirror with LED strips. And look at this massive glass panel for a lot of lighting for all the passengers inside. Now here we have 4 all-wheel drive, but look down here and you'll see a slightly protruding rocker panel, gives it a little bit extra sporty look. And pulling back here, of course, this is what really matters the most, is the style and the looks of these cars from square on. It absolutely looks beautiful. Obviously, you've got lots of ventilation, and there's that wonderful grille again with the wonderful Alfa logo. Here, LED lights from Alfa Romeo and a very strong projector headlamp. But does all this greatness really matter when you have all the problems that these things actually have, including electrical systems that go sideways? One problem is a battery that deteriorates very, very quickly. There's also, unfortunately, a lot of these vehicles hit the market without having the latest and greatest firmware, so there's glitches related to software updates. You can get shifter warning lights randomly, and a whole plethora of other random electrical gremlins that require sometimes component changes. And would you believe even the BCM module, the main harness, in some cases have been seen to have a splice in the middle? Why would you splice that on such a premium price car? And it's those very splice points as well as interruptions in connections, adding connections, that can create other high resistance parts, which essentially lead to a problem in the electrical system. There's also cases of PCM fail, misfires, and check engine lights as a result. And even the sunroof has been known to come off the rails and not function properly. Sadly, even things as simple as the air conditioning haven't also been known to fail. And spending some time on the forums, I've even found that there's customers that have been driving along and randomly the vehicle just shuts off and goes blank out of the blue. So there's definitely electrical gremlins, and it's not even that they're consistent from every single vehicle. One vehicle has it, the next one has something different. That vehicle has yet one more thing, and yet another vehicle has yet one more problem. This is a mere small collection of the myriad of problems you can find in the electrical issues with these vehicles. So at the end of the day, if you want to drive one of these, have 2 things. Number 1, your service department on hot standby, as well as having an OBD2 code reader sitting in the glove box, because you're gonna need it for sure. And so the next car on my list that I can't really recommend at this time because it's got so many electrical gremlins is this little Autobahn burner right here. And we have a Volkswagen Golf, GTI, Beetle, and Jetta of the same generation. And it's particularly if you're using the flip style key. Not so much the electronic keys nowadays, but the older flip style, more in the base models. But that doesn't exclude all Volkswagens from this issue because there are many, many other electrical gremlins related to these Volkswagen Golfs. But currently there's a recall of about 679,000 vehicles between 2011 and 2018. There's a problem with the ignition switch and it not engaging park position in automatic. So when you put your key in and you shut it off in park, that switch doesn't recognize it and that vehicle can actually start to roll away, causing a very dangerous condition. Now the simple fix is essentially a new switch, but the fact of the matter is it impacts so many vehicles that it is a significant issue not just for the owner but as well as the bystanders who might be parked next to it. And the problem doesn't just end there. A lot of these cars have problems with sunroofs, power windows, air conditioning, and unfortunately it doesn't stop at the electrical system. How about the mechanics? I mean, obviously fuel injector, carbon fouling, timing issues, water pumps, you get leaks from coolant and oil. And so the Golf can essentially be a triple threat. Now they are a great car to drive, and I've always enjoyed driving a Golf myself because they are so compact and they're nice to drive. You can also team them up with a manual transmission, makes them very fun and spirited to drive. But unfortunately the quality control sometimes takes a hit. Even on the older Volkswagens, I've had a few older ones where you had problems with fuel pump and fuel pump relays, power windows. I had a Volkswagen Passat, the windows would work one day, next day they wouldn't. Sunroof almost never worked, once in a while it did. Lots of problems even in the engine side of the electrical system. A lot of times it's related to bad grounds, other times it's just a bad installation. And if you think back to many of the Golfs were built in Mexico for many, many years, and you do have to wonder and scratch your head about some of the quality control that left that plant when these landed on US soil. So at the end of the day, Volkswagen Golf, great car to drive, lots of fun, but be prepared to spend some time at the shop. Well, the next vehicle on my list shouldn't be of a huge surprise. It's actually a rolling electrical system, and that's called the Tesla Model S right here. Now the S looks very sleek. It's certainly one of their upscale cars, been around for a few years, so it's had time to work out some of the bugs. Unfortunately, some of the bugs still exist. There we have the Model S, of course specifically the older generation cars. And this one's a 90D, which suggests the power output of these vehicles. And you gotta like that logo Tesla. They definitely hit out of the park with the design. Gotta love these taillights and all of that chrome along the rim there. How about those flaring hips? Definitely gives the car a little bit of a stronger stance, makes it look powerful cruising down the road. And it's got some wicked wheels. But look right here. Look at the door handles. That's been a problem. And again, if you look back here, you'll notice they actually don't even sit outwards. They're actually sitting less than flush. They're actually countersunk, which suggests some of the problems that we're actually going to talk about here. Cameras in there watching us. And I do love those mirrors. That is absolutely a thing of beauty. How about the headlights? Tesla definitely makes some really clean looking headlights, and the overall grille, well, there is none. Because it's an electric vehicle, it doesn't need a radiator or an engine, so it looks very clean up front. You don't need all that grille and all that honeycomb business. How about the extra little chin spoiler right there? Definitely makes the car look very, very sporty. Slightly resembles a fish. If you look at, there's the eyes and there's the big yapper. And there's the great little fender marker. But the interior looks very, very clean. Unfortunately, it's that center screen that's full of problems. And the problems is it sometimes glitches out, crashes, burns, just needs full-on replacement. And unfortunately, because this is all electric, it doesn't use the standard gauge cluster that most vehicles use. You need to run everything through that little center console, that big giant iPad screen. If that thing fails, which it does, and that's been one of the main issues with these, you're left out of luck. You can't drive your vehicle. There's also been lots of HVAC related issues, which have also been a nemesis for a lot of owners. And sadly, I mean, these are great looking vehicles, but this vehicle has had lots of problems with the air suspension system. And that is very, very prone to failure. Ask any owner of a Model S, guaranteed they're going to tell you some story about it. And sadly, here's a startling statistic. 61% of Tesla Model S's have been reported to go into the shop for major problems. Almost 2/3 of these vehicles have significant issues. Do you want to be one of the victims? The Tesla Model S. So the next beast of burden on my list is the Jeep Wrangler, and we also have a Rubicon right here. They're both a lot of fun. They're definitely cult classics, and Jeeps have been synonymous with off-roading. Truly, there are almost no better off-road vehicles than one of these. But unfortunately, in recent years, they've got more complex, added more electronics, under-engineered it, and then you put it in the wrong hands of the manufacturer, and now it's in a place where the reliability isn't what it used to be. Remember the old 4-liter straight six? That vehicle was bulletproof. But let's take a look here. Here's the classic Jeep grille, and that's what people are buying. They love the Jeep, they love that fancy Tonka toy grille, and they like those round headlights. It doesn't matter whether you're driving a 1979 or you're driving a 2020, they look almost the same. I mean, let's take a quick look around here. We've got the typical plastic fenders, very strong and sturdy, definitely all-terrain or mud-terrain tires usually equipped. They've got some great heavy-duty wheels on these Jeeps. And in this case, we've got the Rubicon Unlimited, means it's loaded. Pretty standard, robust looking handles, definitely can take a lot of shots. Oversized, over-engineered hinges. Unfortunately, sometimes they rust here. And they got this great little external filler cap. Really, everything is meant and trail rated for the off-road duty. You typically have another spare on the back. You don't want to use up valuable space at the bottom. Very basic looking taillights. And a very strong and sturdy and robust type of roof. Look, even the mirrors look very sturdy and basic. The beauty is you can take off the roof, you can take off the doors, and you can cruise around in style with these Jeeps. But unfortunately, there's way too many problems, both electrical and mechanical. Let's walk through a few of these problems. The ignition switch has been known to fail. You got to replace that, as well as power windows. Throttle position sensor, TPS, is also a well-known issue. You'll find lots of conversation on the forums about those. And that'll impact the way the vehicle idles, whether it's up and down, hunts, surges, or it just stalls outright. Then there's a wireless control module for your key fob, and the Sentry Key remote module. Unfortunately, no shortages of problems with misfires with ignition coils and check engine lights. How about the big one, the TIPM? That's the totally integrated power module that can impact the entire power system on these vehicles and shut it down at the drop of a hat. And unfortunately, they're quite expensive to replace as well, especially out of warranty. These are a troublesome vehicle, but let's talk about the mechanics of these vehicles. Up here, you can get leaks from the A-pillar coming in from the roof here, dripping in and actually work its way down into the cab, and unfortunately, leaving a puddle of water down in the base. Suspension also gets a little weak down there, and you can develop what they call a speed wobble at about 60 to 70 miles per hour. Because of the slop and the play and the suspension here, it results in a really wild and aggressive wobble on the highway, which isn't only scary, but it's potentially dangerous. You can also get pinion seal leaks at the differential and transfer case, leaking oil. Definitely a problem area that's well identified with these vehicles as well. So unless you're G.I. Joe and you want to use this for an urban cruiser, I think again, this vehicle is going to cause you a whole lot of grief, especially out of warranty. And the only thing saving your butt is that the resale is pretty strong on these Jeeps. And the next vehicle on my list with all kinds of electronic gremlins, amongst other mechanical issues as well, is the Nissan Qashqai? Nissan Qashqai right here. Before we get into statistics, let's look at this vehicle. I mean, it does look quite sporty. Nissan does its big bold front end style thing. I mean, as we look right here, Nissan, you gotta like it. A little bit of chrome touch around there, as well as, I love these headlights. Look at that. Signal, signal, arrow, arrow. Oh yeah, it looks great. The front end does look kind of semi-sporty. Sticks out a little more at the bottom. Gives it that strong underbite look. Of course, we have nice little alloy wheels right there. And look at this great little strip. How about soft touch? And another nice little handle back there, but you'll notice you've got all kinds of plastic cladding, which is good to keep that garbage off the paint. You've got that great taillight assembly. Again, it's not a real basic, it's actually got some engineering to it. Very similar to what you're finding on BMW, where you've got that protruding section and part of it's recessed. It actually looks very sharp. And what we have here is the Qashqai SV all-wheel drive. And down there you've got lots of parking sensors, so it's got all the safety elements you could possibly need. How about a sunroof? And more capability to haul garbage around. Now the interior is a little bit on the basic side, but it's functional. But it's not trying to be a 6 dressing up like a 9. It is what it is. It's a smaller low-cost SUV in the Nissan lineup. But what are some of the issues you can find in the 2014 to 2021 Qashqais? Did you know as many as 40% of these vehicles have shown some sort of electrical gremlin along their lifetime? One big problem is the electric power steering. That has been a known issue throughout. You'll find a lot of conversation around that all over the internet and the power steering. How about batteries? Batteries, for some reason, are draining very quickly, quicker than they really should, but they continue draining. So you put another one in, and then there's reports of the second battery and possibly even a third battery dying. So there seems to be some draw in the system. It's not coordinated well with the capacity of the battery, or there happens to be inherent issues. There's also frequent software updates to rectify some of these issues which aren't dealt with out of the factory. And power windows are something as well that seem to pop up regularly as one of the regular problem areas in the electrical system. The remote fob sometimes doesn't work. It'll open the other doors, but the driver's side won't open. There's some kind of glitch there. It's not just in the fob battery itself, but there seems to be a problem. There's another electrical section that's not working properly sometimes, and it's the cooling fan. So it's the fan that blows air through the radiator to keep the vehicle cool. Well, so there's vehicles now that are in some cases overheating because the fan stops working. There's a capacitor, electrolytic capacitor within the fan circuit that blows and stops doing its job, thus resulting in the fan blower motor not working. That's creating all kinds of other spin-offs as a result. And if you dig on this Qashqai, you'll find a lot more little electrical gremlins that seem to creep in and out of these vehicles. Sadly, some of the bugs aren't totally worked out, but there's also mechanical problems. Let's talk about some of those. The AC air compressor stops working, that's an issue, or it can actually potentially stall out the vehicle because a heavy drag on the system. Ball joints, rear suspension noise, bangs and rattles across all four corners, burning clutches, smoke, smell, stink coming out of the clutch assembly. These vehicles do tend to eat these clutches. And the stop-start feature seems to just stop working. We also can't forget in the 1.5 liter, there are cases with the valves in the engine sticking. If they stick, you get a rough idle, you start blowing smoke, and that can ultimately result in burning valves and essentially an engine rebuild to rectify that problem if it goes far enough. But the sticky valves are often seem to be noted with vehicles that spend a lot of time in slow traffic, putzing around, stop and go, and then it basically just builds up carbon and grabs the valves and keeps them kind of jammed up, and that's your issue there. But unfortunately, the Nissan Qashqai, both electrical gremlins galore and mechanical problems. And the next vehicle on my list that's full of electrical gremlins and full of mechanical gremlins and full of all kinds of gremlins, unfortunately. Now they're great, they're beautiful, and it's the Volkswagen Atlas. It's their big, full-size, girthy, massive, gargantuan, strong SUV. Very handsome, very nice to drive, but there are some significant problems. And I would suggest probably a lease is the best way to go with these vehicles. That way after 3 or 4 years, you can make it go away. But if you do decide to keep it, you better be a great mechanic. But let's talk about this. I mean, look at the Atlas. It's absolutely huge, but it's actually very attractive. I mean, look at the overhang on the back. You know there's a lot of storage capacity there. And I mean, we have these wonderful, beautiful laser cut style rims. We've got lots of plastic cladding as most SUVs have today, but now you're adding a little bit of chrome along the bottom edge, and you've got a lot of chrome all the way around to actually give it some extra contrast and style. Of course, you've got soft touch there and as well right there. How about the mirrors? They're huge, large and in charge with the LED strip. And of course, I love the flares on there. It absolutely looks menacing, looks powerful. And how about those headlights? A little bit upscale, definitely closer to an Audi style. Definitely lots of LEDs going on there and projectors. There's your Volkswagen grille, looks pretty standard fare. And of course, you've got a little grille in there. And the front looks pretty beefy. I like that two-tone style down below and that little front splitter. And how about these gargantuan roof racks? You can literally haul 4x12 sheet of plywood or drywall up here. And of course, you've got glass on the roof for all the passengers inside to enjoy all of the light inside. And that styling here gives it a little bit of contour. If you look down, that line actually doesn't just follow here. It actually comes up and then it slides all the way down. So it actually has a very, very interesting style theme. It's not just a big slab of metal like the older vehicles. And there on the back, of course, we have these awesome, almost Lamborghini-like. I mean, do you remember the Aventador? They had the little arrows, but they go the other way. Well, these have the little arrow LEDs here on that side. And of course, you've got these wonderful chrome tips down there that are actually fake. They're hollow. And the same goes on the other side. Of course, we get the V6, which has more than enough power to pass on the highway. And it's the Atlas, meaning it's ginormous. How about the backup camera hidden behind the Volkswagen symbol? And the absolute high quality interior looks as nice as anything from the Audi brand. So then what is the problem with the Atlas? It's absolutely beautiful, hauls a lot of people, it's comfortable, it's quiet, stylish. Well, unfortunately, there's a bunch of things. How about a 19 out of 100 in terms of predicted reliability by Consumers Reports? How about the frequently dying batteries? They use batteries like they're going out of style. They use such a heavy drain and a draw that I've heard of customers consuming 1 or 2 or possibly 3 batteries within a couple of short years. So in cases where the start-stop system stops working, headlight problems, dome light issues where they randomly work or they don't work or they have a mind of their own. There's been misfires which initiate as check engine light, CEL or an EPC light. There's been fuel injection leaks as well noted in these vehicles, and also an excessive amount of wind noise. Often you hear it around the mirrors, and when you're driving down the highway, there's people noticing way too much noise coming from the outdoors. Some of it may have been poor insulation within the door or the panels of the vehicle. How about broken axles and a radiator leak to boot? So the long and short of it is, there's mechanical problems, there's leaks, there's strange noises, there's all kinds of catastrophes and random glitches in the electrical system. These vehicles don't get rated very high in terms of reliability or predicted reliability, and therefore, again, as I say, best be kept for a lease. And with all of that said, you're going to want to check out this video. It's going to share with you the vehicles with the worst engines you're definitely going to want to avoid. Hope to see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.